Hey everyone, and good afternoon. Welcome to Lead Your Movement. I'm Angelique Rewers, CEO and founder of The Corporate Agent, where we help small and diverse business owners, consultants, coaches, and other experts to win corporate clients. And this is our weekly show where we talk to entrepreneurs and business leaders who are leveraging their platforms in order to make a positive, meaningful, tangible dent in the world. And I think as we head into the end of 2020, and hopefully, I think most of us are looking forward to a better 2021. I think that today's show is particularly relevant because we're going to be talking to someone who has really taken a global perspective to the impact that they're having in the world. And if ever there was a time that the whole world was in a similar boat, it was really this year. So many issues that we face, whether it's a weather event or an economic event, it impacts certain parts of the world, certain regions. And this year we really all had a very shared experience in so many corners of the world, and we're really all in this together in terms of the challenges we face this year. And obviously certain countries and certain parts of the world have more resources than others, and so when we can use what we have in order to support other parts of the world, that's a really beautiful thing. And I think you're going to be very inspired by our guest today and how she's using her platform in order to be able to do just that. Our guest is a client of ours, a good friend of mine, Robbin Jorgensen, who is the founder and CEO of Women Igniting Change, a global purpose-driven organization that unleashes the contribution of women around the world. A highly successful businesswoman with 25 years of experience in both sales and marketing, she's a sought after global speaker and women's leadership strategist. She has worked with women leaders in 14 countries on 6 different continents and is trusted by leading brands like Microsoft, Bank of America, Deloitte, GE, and many others. Please welcome to the show the fabulous, the one and only Robbin Jorgensen. Robbin, thank you for being here.
Oh my God. Hi, Angelique. It's so glad to be here.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited as we
I am
wrap up
too.
this year to have you here talking about this. I mean, we're going to really get into a global perspective
Yeah.
today, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let me start by asking you the question of the hour, which is, what movement are you leading?
Yeah, the movement that I am leading is Women Igniting Change. It's the name of my company, and it's why I named the company that. And it truly is helping women tap into that inner spark that I believe every woman on the planet has something inside of her that she is meant to contribute to society that's bigger than just herself. That could be corporate transformation. It could be financial literacy. It could be something in healthcare. It could be a scientific innovation. Whatever that is for her, every single one of us has that inside of us to deliver into the world. And this movement is really about helping women unleash what that is and giving the tools and the resources to have that greater impact in the world.
So it's it's interesting hearing you talk about this at a time when, at least here in the United States, and you and I were talking about this a little bit in the green room, at a time when the United States has had a massive brain drain and a massive sort of, I want to even say, inspiration and innovation drain
Yeah.
by the amount of women that have left the workforce, just under a million at this point. And honestly, I think that number is probably, Robbin, over a million.
I agree.
Really, I do. I think
Yep.
that there's probably, folks who aren't even being counted. So the corporate world here in the United States, and we've seen this trend in Western Europe as well, women have left the workforce in an unprecedented number this year. How is that going to impact organizations?
Oh my God. In such a massive, massive way, the talent drain that organizations are losing because women are opting out, Zoom world in January, no one knew what Zoom was. Now everybody knows what Zoom is, right?
Yeah.
But women disproportionately, they're trying to not only do their full-time jobs, they're also trying to homeschool their 8 and 10-year-olds while the cat is walking across the screen. They're also trying to run their household at the same time. And it's too much. It's way too much. So they're opting out and saying, you know what, uncle, I can't do this. I'm either going to lower my expectations, take a lower leading role in the organization, or leave altogether. And organizations cannot afford to lose that type of talent because what it's going to do, and we've seen this globally, women have been set back. All the progress that we have made toward the UN SDGs over the last 5 years has backtracked in the last 10 months, and we have to stop that. We can't let it continue to digress.
Yeah, and it's disproportionately affecting
Yes.
certain communities more than other. We're seeing that folks who were sort of right on that line of, really being able to provide for their family are being forced back or really being pushed back into poverty. There's some new data that just came out of Harris. I want to say it was a Harris poll that was conducted that looked at just the amount of stress that women are bearing right now and really feeling at the end, and that's showing up in the workplace as well, which is really unfortunate. When you are working with an organization
Mhm.
to help them to really, I don't always like the word empower. I'm going to be honest with you. That's the word I actually try to, because I don't really think we empower others. I think that we equip sometimes. Like
Good
I'm not a
word.
fan. Like personally, I'm always careful to use the word when I use the word empower,
Yeah.
because I think a lot of women are like, oh, I am an empowered woman. Just get out of my way. Give me the fair.
Right.
Like I am empowered. I was born empowered. Like so, there's a little bit of that. But when you're working with organizations to help make sure that they are setting up their culture in order to allow the women to ignite change,
Yep.
what does that look like? What do companies need to do to basically allow the women to bring everything that they have to the table every day?
Yeah. Well, first of all, any particular meeting that you have, look around the table and notice who's not there. Like literally step back and say who's missing from this conversation that needs to be here. Do we have enough diversity of thought to even have this conversation to address whatever problem this is? So that's the first thing, is getting women to the decision making table, and all different types of women, right? Making sure that there are women of color represented at the table, making sure that there are white women represented at the table, making sure that LGBTQ is represented at the table. So making sure that you're not doing solutions in a vacuum. So that's one. Two is ask women what they need. To your point, so many women have left just in the last couple of months because of COVID. Have organizations step in and say, what do you need us to do? How can we help you? How can we help you with unpaid care work at home? Do you need flexible hours in order to be able to navigate all of this? What do we need to do to help you, to have you stay in the organization? Have those conversations. Be open and transparent. So that's another one. Those would be the top two.
Absolutely. And Rubina's like, yes.
Hi,
Yes.
Ravina.
And if you guys are here with us live today, we're going to definitely be taking questions from Robbin. I think you guys are going to have a lot of questions, especially when we start talking about the work she's doing in Africa and how she's doing that. So by all means, let us know that you're here and be ready to ask some questions in just a few minutes here. So, one of the things, and I want you to push back on me if you
Okay,
don't agree, okay?
I
But one
will.
of the things that drives me crazy when I think about, women igniting change, particularly in the business world, in the workplace, is I feel like so often we haven't even taken care of the basic things, let alone some of the more strategic things. And what I mean by that, Robbin, is that, I was just reading an article. It was either in Mother Jones or Vox, and they were sharing a story about a woman who she had been furloughed when the pandemic hit, and then it was time for her to go back. But because childcare had been closed down, she couldn't even find childcare. So it was just a basic challenge of that. We hear about women in terms of, just certain schedules. issues that they need, even down to things like literally workplace temperature has been literally set to allow men to thrive in the workplace, but women's
Yes.
body temperatures are set differently. So women are miserable and freezing all the time. I mean, just literally, and one that's not as funny. I mean, not that that's, but one that's not even as funny is that there has actually been research done to show that open workspace areas, when buildings went to sort of these big open spaces,
Right. The
that a lot
Facebook
of
model.
exactly
Yeah.
that whole model, that women actually felt more vulnerable, and
Yes.
people looking at them, and they couldn't even do the right. And I feel like there's just these, I don't want to call them silly or stupid, but just these ridiculous, I'm going to call them ridiculous things that
Mhm.
don't take women into account. And then you add to that this idea that there's always these, women's programs, as though women weren't born to lead. I think women have been leading since, we were put on this earth. And so what is your response back to companies when they're not doing those basic things in the workplace that allow women to have that maximum impact?
Well, first of all, I agree with you 1000%. Those are all, you would think that they would have all been taken care of by now, and they're not even on anyone's radar to be taken care of. So, yes, I completely agree 1000%. Again, I think it goes back to being willing to have these conversations. Some progressive organizations, Procter and Gamble is one that I can think of. They're open to having these dialogues with their women leaders, all the way down to the frontline individual contributors. So making sure that you're pacing all the way through and having these dialogues and saying, what are some of the challenges that you're experiencing that are preventing you from giving us your absolute best? What is that? And then listening, putting together focus groups, and then making sure that these women are part of the solution and they're part of the equation in solving the challenges, or at least addressing the challenges, getting it on the table.
Yeah, no, I agree. And to Rubina's point, even though the workforce or the workplace was really designed for men,
Totally
women
was.
continue to rise again and again and again, which is
It's what we do. It's what we do.
what we do.
Yes.
What we do. One of
Yes.
the things I'm curious about are, what are your thoughts about women in the millennial and Gen Z generations, and really making sure as they come into the workplace? Because one of the things we're really seeing, even here in the US, as certain companies, even and the new administration that's coming in, really looking to put more women at the table. And
Yes.
sometimes what we see is that there aren't enough women that have even gotten to certain levels, so that when those senior opportunities open up, there's maybe one female that's in that vice president rung.
Right.
So then you've got an executive vice president spot open, but there's only one female where there's, maybe 20 men
Yep.
to get to that level. So what do we need to do early on to make sure from the beginning we don't keep having those cliffs happen?
Yeah, well, I think, most training organizations around, women's leadership, there's always training for the C-suite. There's typically training for mid-level. That's usually where it stops. A lot of organizations are not willing to invest at that entry level to start cultivating these women leaders and giving them the tools and the resources to make sure that they're ready when those opportunities arise. One of the programs that we deliver is called the Strategic Leader. And it was actually created from one of our clients in a pharmaceutical company who came to us and said, we have amazingly talented women in our organization, but every single time that they try to advance and apply for a senior level role, we're turning them down because they're subject matter experts in what they do, but they don't have that organizational lens that's required to advance. So we actually created a program specifically to address exactly what you're talking about. So they're getting that training all the way up through, and they're learning how to think strategically and organizationally. So when those opportunities arise, they're ready.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. At some point, I'm going to have to do an episode on what we need to be doing all the way down into at the university level, and then even
Oh my
at
God.
the
Yes.
K-12 education level. I
Totally.
just kind of got into it with with the school that our kids go to, because one of the things that they were doing really showed unconscious bias, and it was like really built, right in. And I thought, wow, look at how
Yeah.
this is going all the way down into K-12, and how we're doing that. And I think there's a piece to that has to be addressed as well. Let me ask you one more question on this front before we change gears a little bit.
Sure.
And that is, what do we do about the unconscious bias piece of this? So when you're looking at women igniting change, and some of the unconscious bias, there was a little snafu with the NFL about a week ago. One of the announcers made a comment. He didn't really understand the backlash that he got because he felt like it was an innocent comment.
Right.
As he was announcing one of the games, it was a Steelers game. And it wasn't the worst thing in the world that it wasn't that, but what it really did show is he had an unconscious bias.
Right.
And I think, it was really interesting watching the social media comments. Some people were saying, oh, there's an overreaction to it. Other women were like, no, this is really offensive. And the bottom line was it was like, oh, careful, your unconscious bias is showing.
Right.
So what do we do about that?
Yeah, I think this year more than any other year, we've been in business for 10 years, and 2020 has really started to shine a light glaringly around unconscious bias and the trainings that need to start happening. So that's another training that we provide inside organizations as well. And I want to give all of the listeners a tool they can do themselves. It's the Harvard Implicit Association Test. Look that up on Google. You can take all different types of different biases. It can be on race, it can be on gender, it can be on sexuality, it can be on religion, it can be on politics. And you literally can test yourself to see what your own unconscious biases are, because we all have them, women included.
Can you say the name of it again?
Sure. It's the Harvard Implicit Association Test. And when we go into organizations, we do this live, and we've done it virtually now, of course. But everyone in the room is taking this test at the same exact time, and they're shouting out answers, and they're looking around and they're going, oh my God, like you have the same unconscious bias that I do. So it's very glaringly revealing when the whole room is like, oh wow, we have a lot of work to do here. So that's one. And then the deeper dive of that is, what are the unconscious biases that exist within your particular organization? Because there's nuances to every single organization. And really having training and flip charting and identifying from people in the training, what do we have in our organization, in our team, in our department? And then once you identify it, how are you going to mitigate it? What are some of the strategies to actually go about mitigating this? And create action steps, create timelines, create measurements, create KPIs, and then actually do something about it.
Yeah, I think, there has to be a willingness, right? At the
100%,
level for this,
100%.
right? I mean, you and I have both worked in organizations at various times where it wasn't even unconscious. It was just a conscious bias, and it wasn't one that they were willing, to address. So there's that piece of it. Fortunately, I feel like the marketplace is holding organizations.
Oh my God. They're demanding it. They are demanding it, which I think is fantastic.
It is fantastic.
Yes.
It is fantastic. I want to change directions here for just a little
bit.
You're doing something that is absolutely phenomenal. You take a real global perspective to the impact that you're having, and you're doing something remarkable in Rwanda. Talk about what you're doing there, and then I want to know how it came about.
Yeah, it's one of my most favorite places on earth. It's been so hard to not be there this year. I literally just got back on March 1st when everything closed down. And obviously I haven't been back since, and I'm usually there 4 or 5 times a year. So that's been really hard to not get back over there. So what we're doing in Rwanda is we are in the process of building an economic empowerment center for women in Rwanda. And I have to give you the backstory, because my entire career of owning Women Igniting Change, I've really just leaned in and trust that the universe is going to guide me in whatever direction the company is meant to go. And in 2017, I was delivering a workshop to some senior women at Bank of America in Atlanta, Georgia, where I live. And at one point in the workshop, I just went to move on to the next section. And I was asking them what some of their goals were and their dreams, and they shared. And one of the senior VPs said, well, what's one of yours? No one has ever asked me that in the 10 years of the company. And I just blurted out, we would love to work with women in Rwanda. I have no idea where that came from. Now I just say it's a divine download. I have no clue where that came from. At the end of the workshop, one of the other SVPs came up to me and said, I have a contact for you. Her executive MBA professor teaches at Mercer in Atlanta. He's Rwandan. She put me in touch with Dr. Musanera. So he and I had a great conversation. And he brings students over to Rwanda once a year called Mercer on Mission. And they work with a group of extraordinary women called Avega Agahozo. And they are the widows of the genocide of 1994. So they help them with business training, leadership training, marketing training, etc. So this was like April of 2017. And he said, well, we're bringing a group of students over in June. You're welcome to join us. And I'm like, done. I'm coming. I'm going. Here was the challenge. They were leaving Atlanta on June 1st. Now they were going for 3 weeks. I had committed to a speaking engagement in Albany, New York on June 7th. So I'm like, okay, I have to go. I know I have to go. How do I make this happen? And everyone's like, you can't just go to Africa for a couple of days. You're nuts. I'm like, you don't understand. I have to go. So we left on a Thursday night. We landed Friday night. I was in the country Saturday, Sunday, Monday, 3 days. I left Monday night, flew straight up to Albany, New York, landed Tuesday night, spoke Wednesday morning. That's how bad I knew I had to go. And once I was there, I knew why. Because working with these women is probably one of the most rewarding things I have ever done in my entire career. And, after that initial trip, then we went back in under our own brand, still working with Avega Agahozo, spreading out throughout the country. We now work with the gender monitoring office in the country, because that's a thing. In a developing country, there's a gender monitoring office that every single law that is enacted in the country goes through that office to make sure that gender is considered before it becomes law. What a thing. Yeah. So we work with them, helping them with strategy for the private sector companies in Rwanda. We work with the Akila Institute, which is the only all-women's college in Rwanda, helping train their faculty and staff. So we've just kind of spread out. And then, the divine download that I had initially, February of 2018, I'm literally standing in my bathroom putting on mascara, and I get another one of these divine downloads. And I hear this voice that says, you need to build an economic empowerment center for women in Rwanda. And I just started to cry. And I'm like, okay, here we go. Because I've learned over the last 10 years, literally to just lean in and trust that that's the direction that the company is meant to go. I'm like, all right, let's go figure this out. So from there, we went back over and conducted several listening tours with government agencies, with women's groups in the city of Kigali, out in the rural areas. It just kind of compiled a lot of data, because I think one of the dangers of being a Western organization going to the developing world is taking our unconscious biases, right, and saying, well, here's what you need, go do this. That's not the approach. We wanted to make sure that whatever we were creating, it was something that they actually needed and wanted. So we conducted several listening tours, started putting some things together, started working with the Ministry of Gender in Rwanda. And that's where I was in February, signing the Memorandum of Understanding to build the center. So we now have an international NGO on the ground that's registered in Rwanda. We have an incredible board of directors here in the States that helps back it. And we're starting to build this movement. And our ultimate goal is to spread these economic empowerment centers literally across the continent. So we're starting in Rwanda in the center, and then we're going to spread it out across all of Africa. And I have to give you the backstory of the name of the center. So the name of the center is the Cora Women's Center, C-O-R-A. And our logo, I'll show you my phone. So the logo of Women Igniting Change.
Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. So I can't do this backwards. So her name is Cora. So the woman enveloping the globe with a spark coming out of her hand. My coach was creating the logo. He said to me, well, what's her name? I'm like, I don't know. What do you mean, what's her name? He's like, she needs a name. So I was at a conference at the Omega Institute where Sally Field was speaking. And she was giving a speech and she was talking about that inner spark that we all have. And she said, it's kind of like it's the core of who you are. And she was doing this with her hand and like a spark. And she's like, it's kind of like this is the core of who you are. But this gets covered up by society, culture, friends, family, where this can't breathe anymore. And again, I just burst into tears. I'm like, her name is Cora. So Cora stands for the core of who you are, the real you. So that's where the name of the Cora Women's Center came from.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, there's so many beautiful things in what you just said. To Rachel's comment earlier, yes, thank you, Dr. Nicholas Harvey. One of the things that you said that I just want to illuminate for everyone is part of this all started merely because you articulated a desire.
Totally.
And it's amazing what happens when you say it out loud, especially when you say it to other people, because the universe starts lining things up.
Boy, does it ever.
Right? Boy,
Yes.
does it ever. My grandmother would say, careful what you wish for,
Exactly.
careful what you ask for, because when you say it and you put it out there, it's like whoosh, all this stuff comes in. And I think that really there must have been, when you spoke it, a conviction, more just than like a side thought. There was a conviction to it because the universe really only lines up when there's a decision and a conviction about something, right? So you spoke it literally instantaneously. Someone showed up with a solution that had you not spoken it, right?
Right.
You took action on it, and then you've really have continued to kind of have that moment from, oh gosh, what is that movie with Harrison Ford where he's like stepping out, like Raiders of the Lost Ark or whatever, right? Like he keeps stepping out like in faith onto the next
100%.
right? As it appears, and you keep doing that. What has been the most challenging thing about taking on a project, pandemic aside? I'm going to take the pandemic out for a second because I think everything's gotten harder and in some ways easier on certain things, right? But harder in terms of no travel, etc.
Right.
That aside, what's been the most challenging for you as you've stepped into Rwanda to create this type of an impact model in country?
Because the vision that I have is so large. When I'm in country, the magnitude of the need is literally all encompassing. It's all enveloping. So I think that's been the most challenging to see. I could do this for the next 50 years all over the globe and still not get to what needs to be done for these women. So that's the most challenging part, is the magnitude of the need when you're on the ground and you look around, you're like, oh my God, we have so much work to do. Yeah, that's the magnitude.
Yeah, that, I can relate to that. When I was in South Africa 2 years ago, as part of the first Virgin Unite trip that I went on, here I was part of an adventure and a initiative backed, with Virgin, and you've got, someone like a Richard Branson, all of his brands, all of his relationships, his elders council that he's created, the financial backing. They have the B team of major corporations that are involved. They have all of these pieces. Plus they have an entire network of entrepreneurs all over the freaking world that are all coming to bring our resources, our platforms, our insights to bear. And still, as I was watching we were on site, we were at an entrepreneur center mentoring entrepreneurs. We were at one of the first free college in South Africa mentoring students. Like, we were doing all this, and I'm like, there's barely a dent here. There's so much need.
There is.
How do you, from a mindset and an energy perspective, how do you how do you get inspired by that versus getting buried under the weight of that?
Yeah, that's actually pretty easy. Because when you're working with these women, the only difference between women in the developing world and you and I is that we won the geographic lottery. That's it. They have the same hopes, same dreams, same desires that we have here. So when you're on the ground with these women, the resiliency that these women have just in their day-to-day lives puts everything in perspective and makes you want to fight for them and makes you want to serve them even greater. So that's such an easy thing when I do get overwhelmed with the magnitude of the need. If I'm working with a small group of women coffee farmers and going out into the fields and just seeing what they do every single day, I'm like, all right, we got this. We got this. So yeah, just being around them puts you right back into what you need to do.
So take me in country. I'm listening to the show today. I'm here. Take me on the ground with you for a minute and share with us a story of something that has, happened with you interacting with these women in country. Take us there through your eyes.
Yeah. Oh my God. Let me pick one. There's so many. I would say I'm going to go back to the women coffee farmers. So I spent an incredible day with a group of women coffee farmers, and I don't even drink coffee, but I wanted to understand a day in the life of a female coffee farmer because that's one of the predominant exports in Rwanda. So if you've never had Rwandan coffee, I've heard it's amazing. Bring it back every time I go.
Bring me some back.
I promise I will. I promise I will. So Agnes is one of these just amazing lights who was training me and teaching me how to grow coffee. And you would never realize how long it takes to get a coffee plant from this little seed to the actual tree to actually have a bean in your hand to make coffee. It takes months. So just going through the process of the pride that she has in every single detail that she does. So that was one. And then again, the resiliency and the innovation. They make their own fertilizer out of different ingredients that are naturally on the ground to care for these coffee trees. The smile on her face in training me as to, what a coffee bean looks like when it's ripe or when it's not ripe enough yet. And there's a bracelet that you wear that has the exact color of what the coffee bean should look like. So you can just hold it up and you know whether to pick it or not pick it. And then just the joy that they have in what they do and the pride that they take in providing for their family and providing healthcare for their children and school fees for their children and literally spending 12, 14-hour days out in the coffee fields, then going home, cooking and cleaning, helping their children with the homework. They're just the most extraordinary human beings I've ever had the privilege to know. They really are.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
When we were working, doing some work with USAID around securing water for food, one of the big challenges of so many of the entrepreneurs in Africa is around water supply.
Mm-hmm.
Is that an issue for some of these businesses in Rwanda there as well?
It is out in the rural areas. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. They're walking literally 2 hours one way just to get water and then walking the 2 hours back. And that's before they start their day. That's just to get the day started.
And that's, not taking into consideration the global warming and all the climate impacts that we're having. One of the things I was most blown away by the innovators who are developing some of these technologies was just how simple some of the technologies were, but the challenge of getting the technology into the right hands, and supply chain issues, distribution channel issues, even just certain government regulations, just things, all this bureaucracy, all of this sort of anti-gravity to certain things that these folks are trying to accomplish. How are you bringing in, or are you bringing in any outside partners, whether those be entrepreneur or corporate or higher ed? What are some of the things that you're doing in your impact model to leverage because you're a small business owner, you're a boutique business owner, right? Relationships are everything. Who and what are you leveraging on behalf of the work that you're doing in Rwanda?
Yeah, I would say we're just starting down that path, Angelique, of leveraging those corporate relationships that we've cultivated over the last decade. Again, organizations that already have a passion around economic empowerment for women in Africa, Procter and Gamble, Johnson and Johnson, Mastercard, those types of organizations, Coca-Cola, that already have that built into their DNA. That it's already an element of what they do. So finding a way that we can tie what we're doing and what they're doing together to maximize the benefit for both organizations. So there's a win-win-win for everybody. So that's the ultimate goal starting in 2021.
That's amazing. If you guys
Yeah.
have questions for Robbin about what she's doing in Rwanda, I'd love to hear them. I know she's happy to answer. She's an open book and happy to answer anything. So let's bring this full circle back
Sure.
while we're seeing if anybody has any questions for you. Let's bring this full circle back to the work you're doing here in the US.
Mm-hmm.
How are you bringing those two things together? How are you balancing the time between the two? And how is the work that you're doing in Rwanda, if at all, supporting how you're interacting and supporting companies here? Like, take us through the interaction of these two things, the balance of these two things, and I would even say the force multiplier of the relationship between
Yep.
the work you're doing in the States and the work you're doing in Rwanda.
Yeah. So God, that's a loaded question, Angelique.
It is a loaded question.
And I love it. I love it. So one of the things that we do with every organization that we work with here in the US or, Europe or somewhere that's the developed country. One of the things that we do is any investment that an organization makes with us, we give a percentage of that to an organization that serves women and girls. And it may be an organization that they identify. They may have one internally, or if they don't have one, they'll ask us and we'll identify it for them. Now that we've started our work in Rwanda, that will go toward the Quora Women's Center specifically, but we've contributed tens of thousands of dollars over the past decade to various organizations. So that's one, is knowing that any program that they invest in with us, we're paying that forward and they're giving back in that way. Another one is to make sure that the employees as a whole know what we're doing inside the organization. So we have something called the Ignite badge that we provide to organizations that showcases that they are women igniting change, if you will, and that they believe in what we do as an organization. And part of that is showcasing some of the work that we do in Rwanda. So if you're an employee and you're walking down the cubicles or you see our badge on an office door, there's a tie-in to Rwanda because there's an image of the women there next to our logo. And they know that their organization not only supports the women leaders inside the company, but they're also supporting women in Africa at the same time. So that's one of the ways that we tie that together too.
That's incredible. So we do have a question that came in. What is your structure? Obviously, the work that you do with companies here in the US is a for-profit company.
Correct.
Do you have a B Corp also, or a nonprofit also, or is it structured in Rwanda? Like how do you have this set up from a business structure perspective?
Yeah, so Women Igniting Change here in the States is a for-profit organization. We now have an international NGO on the ground in Rwanda, and we have a 501c3 here in the States for the Quora Women's Center.
So you have an NGO, you have a 501c3, and you have a for-profit organization.
Yes.
So I
just don't sleep, Angelique. I don't sleep.
I was just going to say, right? And Mariette said, bravo. I agree, Mariette. So there's a part of me that is, so I am imagining, Robbin, that I'm going to get these questions afterwards, like, Angelique, I'm still figuring out what my business is all about. And Robbin's over here running 3 separate organizations. So my first, I need you to address something because I feel like folks are going to get the wrong impression. And if I'm wrong about this, Robbin, correct me.
I will. Go ahead.
You did not have, I assume, you did not have all this figured out.
Oh, God, no.
You said, I'm going to go do this. I'm making the decision to do it, and I'm going to figure it out as I build the plane. Is that a fair statement?
That is 1,000% accurate. That is how I have built Women Igniting Change for the past 10 years. Build the plane while you fly it. That's the motto. 1,000%. When I first went to Rwanda, and then I had, this idea to build this economic empowerment center, I had no clue about international NGOs or government entities or working with ministries of government. Not a clue. One step in front of the other, and this relationship led me to this one, and this one connected me over here, and you just follow the path. But you have to be willing to, you have to have something that is so much greater than yourself that you're willing to put a stake in the ground around, that pulls you through the fear. Because of course the fear is there. Looking back now, I look at the photo of me signing the MOU at the Ministry of Gender in Rwanda, and all of the work that it took to make that happen. And that literally could bring me to tears, because I see it, I'm like, wow, like, look what we've done over the last even couple of years to make that happen, which was extraordinary. And you just have to, something has to be calling you that's so much greater than yourself. It just pulls you through the fear, and you just go do it. You just do.
Speaking of you just go do it, I want to go back to something that you said, because it drives me absolutely, like, you've known me for a while. So
I have.
To Rachel's point of, it's just how she rolls, and you also know just how I roll, right?
Yes, I do.
So I feel like you told a story about, look, you have this speaking engagement. I think you said it was on a June 7th. The trip is leaving June 1st, but it takes you, over 24 hours basically between going to the airport, the flight. We all know what happened. Well, not many of us know when you get to Africa that there's a whole thing, you're not right where you need to be, right? There's a whole thing. Yeah. So and the time change and the jet lag, and also the disruption and the flight cancellations that can happen, and lost luggage and all sorts of things. And you looked at this calendar and you said, well, I'm going to leave. I'm going to go do it. I'm probably not going to sleep that well on the flight. I'm not going to sleep that well on the flight back. I'm going to have jet lag in both directions. I'm going to go do what I have to do. Like, when you made that decision and you were looking at that and you said, I'm just going to go do it, how has that then shaped other decisions that you've made? Like, when you looked at the calendar and you said, as a CEO, this is what I need to go do. How has that then rolled forward into you leading this movement and you reaching your business goals and you doing all the things that you're doing?
I think each decision builds on the last, and that was definitely clearly a monumental decision that I made. But I think I've always been that way naturally, that I just dive in. I'm a 9 quick start. I just dive in. I know you are. I just dive in and then I just figure it out. So I think that's just a natural tendency of my personality. But from there forward, every single decision literally has just built on the last one, and you gain confidence and conviction with every single one of those decisions that you didn't think you could make, and you made it, and you look back, you're like, all right, that wasn't so bad. What's the next one? Let's go. So they just kind of build on each other.
Yeah. I do feel like it's a muscle that you build.
100%.
I think certain people are more predisposed to certain things, but one of the ones I talk about all the time is one of the muscles that I've had to build over the years is just the speed by which I'm making decisions.
Oh my gosh.
Like, the more your business grows, the bigger it's like the speed that you're making decisions. You don't have time to like sit on a decision for a week. You're making a decision in 3 minutes.
Right.
So someone's asking, what is your Kolbe MO, Robbin?
3593.
3593. That's actually really interesting. So
I'm pretty close to Phil. Phil and I like switch. I think he's a 5393.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, so Phil's a little bit different. So
yeah.
Like 3 fact finder. I mean, so what's really, so I'm a 6 fact finder, right? I'm a 6392. What's so fascinating, I think, is that even though I'm willing to jump out of tall buildings without a parachute and figure it out on the way down.
Right.
I also have a lot of statistics and data and research as I'm jumping out the window. So I think it's sort of an interesting where you're like, I'm just going to bottom line it. Bottom line
it. Yes.
Bottom line.
And then, you dive in when you have to, like putting together a 5-year action plan for the Ministry of Gender in Rwanda. They needed some statistics. We can do anything in short bursts, right? So you do it when you have to.
You do it when you have to.
Yeah.
And I have to imagine that Google is your best friend.
Google is my absolute best friend. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all there.
Yep.
You're like, I'll say yes, and then I'll go to Google and I'll
Exactly.
figure it out.
Yes, exactly.
No, I love it. So what do you want so if you could say anything to the corporate side right now, if you could say anything to those corporate decision makers out there, what would you say to that group?
I would say start talking to the women in your organization. Start opening up dialogue, especially, we're not going back to the old normal. The old normal is gone, and the old normal was broken anyway. We don't really want to go back to that inside organizations. So start having conversations with women in your company from the C-suite all the way down to the individual contributor and ask what they need. Ask what they need, make sure that they're at the decision-making table, and make sure that they're part of the solution. And make sure that you're not creating solutions in a vacuum and you're looking around the table and literally asking everyone around the table who's missing, who's not here that should be, to make sure that we have enough diversity of thought to actually address this challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes it's the people not at the table that you really need to ask,
Yes,
right? It's the
1,000%.
people not at the table that
Yes.
you need to ask those questions to. And then what do you want the entrepreneurs that listen to the show to know about how they could support you with the work that you're doing in Rwanda? Maybe you're not there yet. You might get inundated after this with folks who want to support you. And which is great. And sometimes there's also a structure that has to be put in place so you can organize those
Yep.
resources and those offers. What, if anything, do you need from other entrepreneurs right now, and how they can support what your efforts are in Rwanda?
Yeah, I would say that, well, we always need funds. So there's always, anyone who wants to contribute as a year-end gift that they want to get off their back, we will gladly take it. Our website will be live in December. In the meantime, they can email me directly, Robbin@womenignitingchange.com, and that's Robbin with 2 B's. So if you're interested in supporting the Core Women's Center, just send me an email. We'll make sure to stay connected, and as soon as that's ready, we'll let you know. So that's one. And the second one is just based on what you've heard me talk about, are there any connections that you have? Connections either in organizations or in a global supply chain or manufacturing, because our ultimate goal is to help these women not only become economically sufficient, but to get their incredible products and services into the global supply chain across the continent of Africa, over to Europe, over to the US, and really get them the global exposure and resources that they really need.
I love it. And how do you want people to connect with you? How would you like people to stay up to date on what you're doing?
Yeah, so you can go to our website, womenignitingchange.com. And other than that, I would say connect with me on LinkedIn and follow the posts and the things that I do on LinkedIn. Those would be the 2 best places.
Absolutely love it, Robbin. You are such an inspiration. Thank you for
Thank
taking
you.
us through your eyes onto the ground of what's going on in Rwanda and the work that you're doing. And I think more than anything, I want to thank you for just saying yes to those divine downloads,
Oh, thank you.
not once, not twice, but I know there's been just look, it doesn't just happen in moments. It's a constant yes that you're giving every day
Yeah,
to these divine downloads and taking action. And I want to congratulate you and honor you for that, because
thank you.
there are a lot of people, I think, that have that divine download and then they just kind of shove it away and they don't do anything with it.
And the universe just gets even louder and louder until you actually listen.
That is true. You gotta watch out. You get a few taps before that 2
Yep,
by 4,
that's
right?
it.
Oh my gosh, you are such an inspiration, friend. Thank you for this work that you're doing. Let us know how we can support you, and please
Thank
keep us
you.
posted. Come back. Come back as you get
I
as you
will.
further launch and you take this bigger. Please come back and tell us about more of what you're doing.
I would love to. Thanks, Angelique.
Awesome. Thanks, Robbin. All right, everybody. Well, we still have one more episode this year coming up before the holidays. And we're actually going to be talking to yet someone else who is having a global impact and has created a nonprofit that is doing work both here in the United States as well as around the world, that I know you're going to be absolutely fascinated to hear from in terms of her impact model and how she is changing the world. So make sure you join us again live next Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern for our final Lead Your Movement episode of 2020. It's all, I think I'll also be celebrating a little bit of just saying goodbye to this year as we head into a year, hopefully a much more, I want to say, freeing year from the perspective that we'll all be able to travel again and connect with one another in person. But I'm so glad we've been able to connect with all of you this year through the show. Be sure to bring your questions next week and your comments. We're so thrilled to have you with us, and I will see you next week at 1 p.m. Eastern. See you then.